Throughout our world, from Central and South America to parts of Asia, children born into poverty are being given an opportunity to lead a better life. They're part of a loving family in Christ, one that's devoted to providing them with food, clothing, shelter, medical care, and an education. Through this extended family, known as the Sisters of Mary, more than 20,000 young lives are being given hope each year, just as it's been given to the thousands of other children who've come before them. The Sisters of Mary were founded in 1964 by Monsignor Aloysius Schwartz, more affectionately called Father Al by those whose lives he touched. His was a life of unconditional love, a life dedicated to helping children break free from the destructive cycle of poverty. Without Father Al's untiring devotion to the poor, many impoverished youngsters would never have had an opportunity for a better future. This faithful priest spent virtually his entire life bringing hope to the world's underprivileged. Born in Washington, D.C. on September 18, 1930, Aloysius Schwartz heard his calling to serve the Lord at a very young age, entering the seminary when he was only 14 years old. During this time, he attended high school and college, later going to the University of Louvain in Belgium, where he completed his theological studies. Then, on June 29, 1957, at the age of 26, he was ordained a priest. Inspired by frequent visits to the Shrine of the Virgin of the Poor while studying in Belgium, Father Al made the decision to devote himself to serving those in dire need. Only a few years before Father Al's ordination, an armistice ended the Korean War. But this horrible conflict left behind thousands of desperate widows, orphans, beggars, and street children. The situation seemed hopeless, with nearly half of South Korea's population being unemployed. This turned otherwise productive and honest people into rag sellers, beggars, and sometimes thieves. Eager to help, Father Al arrived in that country on December 8, 1957, ready to begin his lifelong work. But shortly after his arrival, without warning, Father Al collapsed while saying Mass. Diagnosed with hepatitis A, he was forced to return to the United States to regain his strength. Although his body was extremely weak during this time, his spirit was incredibly strong, and his commitment to serve the poorest of the poor went unchanged. So while recuperating over the next few years, Father Al went from parish to parish in the United States, making appeals at Sunday Mass for his life-saving mission work. During this time, in early 1961, he established a fundraising organization known as Korean Relief, the same charitable group known today as World Villages for Children. At the end of 1961, having recovered from his long illness, Father Al returned to South Korea, where he was assigned as a parish priest. Leading a humble life, Father Al continued to express his unwavering faith in God by serving the poor.
Come directly to Busan, to Korea, and actually see the reality, the flesh and blood reality. And when you're confronted with a child who's sick and tubercular, who's homeless, you can't be indifferent. You have to help this individual on a one-to-one, on a person-to-person basis.
But being a realist, he knew help was needed from others, that he couldn't do it alone. So in 1964, Father Al founded the Sisters of Mary, a religious order that today carries on his worldwide charitable programs. Father Al, together with the Sisters of Mary, began to establish Boys Town and Girls Town facilities for orphans, street children, and others from very poor families. They also built hospitals and sanatoriums for indigent patients, as well as hospices for disabled elderly men who were homeless, retarded children, and unwed mothers. Here was an example of being a good Samaritan in every facet of one's life. In the early 1980s, Father Al founded another religious order to help with his charitable programs, the Brothers of Christ. And later in 1985, he began to extend his benevolent work to the Philippines at the invitation of Cardinal Jamie Sin and government officials. By the late 1980s, however, Father Al's health began to fail once again, but this time it would be fatal. In a message delivered in late 1991 to those who supported him, Father Al explained his terminal condition.
The disease with which I am currently afflicted is called amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, or more popularly, Lou Gehrig's disease. It is a terminal illness. The time span from diagnosis to death is usually 3 years. I am now well into my 3rd year. Although the disease of its nature is very unpredictable, it is possible, even probable, that I am now in my final year.
To Father Al, this incurable illness was a gift from God, a gift he would bear with serenity, joy, and tremendous courage. Understanding that his physical life would soon be at an end, and realizing that children elsewhere in the world desperately needed his help, Father Al made the decision to expand his caring work to Central America. So in that region of the world, just as he was doing in South Korea and the Philippines, Father Al began to help needy children living in dire circumstances. In 1990, he began building a Boys Town, Girls Town complex just outside Mexico City. And following Father Al's death in 1992, the Sisters of Mary have now expanded their charity programs into Guatemala, Brazil, and Honduras. Through the generosity of kind people around the world, Father Al was able to offer a new life to the children of poverty, giving them food to eat, clean clothes to wear, a safe roof over their heads, medical care to keep them healthy, as well as a good education, basic yet crucial necessities that are needed to break the cycle of poverty. So how could this unassuming priest make such a positive difference in the lives of so many? How could he build and operate such large facilities to care for so many needy children? And how could he accomplish all of this in such faraway regions of the world? To Father Al, it was very simple. His work was God's work, and he let Jesus be his guide.
At the Last Supper, he says, "My peace I give to you, my peace I leave with you." And then he speaks to the children of the poor. "Let the little children come unto me," he says, "and suffer them not, for of such is the kingdom of heaven." And Jesus takes each child one by one into his arms, caresses the child, blesses the child. And he does this with a smile on his face. Also, he speaks to the poor and lowly, "Come to me, all you who labor and are burdened, I will refresh you. Learn of me, for my heart is meek and humble." He speaks to these poor and lowly people with a smile on his face, and with an attractive, joyful, gentle expression.
Father Al's loving smile never faded, even through his pain. He refused to give in to negative thoughts, to harbor feelings of self-pity, or to question the will of God. This gave him the strength needed to continue improving the lives of others. Although paralyzed and in much physical agony, Father Al continued doing God's work for as long as he possibly could. Sadly, it would only be a matter of months after saying Mass for his children in Mexico that Father Al would be taken from us. After this brief visit to his newest Boys Town, Girls Town village, one that he called his unfinished symphony, Father Al returned to the Philippines, where on March 16, 1992, he left this earth to live eternally in the presence of God. Father Al's memorial service was conducted at the Sisters of Mary complex in Silang, with admirers lining the streets to pay their last respects. This selfless priest was then laid to rest there. Father Al's remains are entombed in the Virgin of the Poor Chapel, a replica of the Belgian shrine that inspired his lifelong devotion to serving those in desperate need. Although he is no longer with us, Father Al's deep love and courageous spirit live on. Today, the Sisters of Mary continue helping the poor free themselves from a life of poverty, suffering, and despair. With the generous support of many concerned people throughout the world, they're now caring for and educating more than 20,000 needy children. Through the Sisters of Mary, the important work begun by Father Al continues to improve the lives of thousands of people in the Philippines, South Korea, Mexico, Guatemala, Brazil, and Honduras. Currently, there are 13 world villages where poor children, mostly of high school age, are provided with food, clothing, shelter, medical care, and an education. In this loving environment that Father Al created, children in need are being given a chance to build new lives for themselves. They're being prepared to make productive contributions to their cultures. And after leaving the boys' towns and girls' towns, they're giving back by helping their families and communities, creating a cycle of love and help. The life of Monsignor Aloysius Schwartz was one filled with love for God and love for the world's poor. Although this devoted servant of God is no longer with us in a physical sense, his spirit lives on as he continues helping the poor through the Sisters of Mary, the Brothers of Christ, and World Villages for Children. But to continue Father Al's charitable programs, help is very much needed. Your help. So please, go to the World Villages for Children website at www.worldvillages.org to learn what you can do. With immense joy, and at times through considerable pain, Father Al devoted himself to helping children in despair, children who, without his caring heart, would otherwise be chained to a life of poverty and hopelessness. Please be part of our family, a family dedicated to serving God by helping the poor. Following in Father Al's footsteps, together, we can lead a life of love.